He was just an average boy on his way to school, but when he finds a mysterious alien cube, it suddenly fuses with him and it grants him unimaginable power. The story begins as we see a beam of light coming from a building. There's chaos inside, and the guards realize that the cube they're protecting has been stolen. We meet a girl named Aki, who escapes with the cube, but the guards surround her, and they realize she's a Mecha-Ude host, as she summons two mechanical arms to fight. She starts attacking them, but the guards suddenly restrain her with their anti-Mecha-Ude weapons. A man named Kazuha appears, and he tells her he's going to take the cube back, as he summons his own weapon, saying that the Mecha-Ude are just tools for them to use. He transforms his weapon into a sword, and he knocks the cube out of her hand, telling her he can teach her how to use her tools, but she suddenly breaks free from the restraints, and she attacks him, but he manages to push her back. He orders his men to catch her, but she takes them out, and she charges at him, so he blocks her attack, but he loses the cube, and she tries to take it back. But the container breaks, causing a huge burst of energy, and we see a boy named Hikaru watching from a distance, as he hears a voice calling for help. The next day, Hikaru wakes up in his room, and he makes his way to school. As he rides the train, he thinks about what happened last night, and he looks it up online, but he realizes that nobody's talking about it. The man next to him suddenly falls asleep, and he sees a pregnant woman, so he thinks about giving up his seat, but the man rests on his shoulder, so he can't stand up. He realizes that everyone's staring at him, and he sees an ad which tells him to step forward. So he prepares to get up, when he hears about an assignment that he forgot. The man wakes up, and he lets the woman take his seat, as Hikaru's friends get on the train, and he tells them about what he saw at night, showing them a video, but he realizes that it didn't capture the pillar of light. So they don't believe him, and a girl named Mara asks them what they're looking at, so they tell her about his ridiculous story. They ask him about the voice he heard, so he tells them it was asking for help, and they start teasing him, telling him he heard a ghost, but he suddenly hears the voice again, and he realizes where it came from. So he starts looking around, but he reaches a restricted area, and a guard is about to stop him, but he suddenly receives orders from his superior, so he just tells Hikaru to go home. But he hears the voice again, so he decides to enter the area, and he sees the cube, realizing it's what's talking to him. But when he touches it, it suddenly flies into the air, and it lands on his back, causing a pillar of light to appear, as it transforms into a mechanical arm. It realizes that it has been saved, and Hikaru freaks out as it thanks him, because he has no idea what's going on. It tries to introduce itself, but it doesn't remember its name, and he tries to pull it out, but he realizes that he can't, because it's attached to his hood. A drone appears, and it mentions that the target has been found, but Hikaru thinks it's just a delivery drone, so he removes his jacket, thinking he should never have picked up the cube, because he thinks it belongs to the Kagami group. But the drone believes he's a member of ARMS, and it prepares to kill him, so he runs away, but the arm grabs onto his leg. He tries to remove it, but the drone catches up to them, and it tries to cut him up, but the arm protects him and destroys the drone. He realizes that the arm is dangerous, but it tells him they don't have time to relax, because there are more drones approaching. We see a girl as she reports to her superiors, telling them the trigger arm has been found, but it seems to have derized with a human. She mentions that he's a civilian, but her superior doesn't care, telling her to capture the trigger arm at all costs. Hikaru hides from the drones, and he asks the arm what's happening, but it explains that it has no idea, saying the only thing it knows is that he's a good person. It explains that it can't move without Iberium, but Hikaru has no idea what it's talking about, and it asks for his name, but he starts walking away, thinking it will be fine since it could move. It tells him they're still in danger, but he blames it for everything, thinking he needs to just abandon it, but it suddenly stops moving. So he rushes back, and it's able to move again, as he realizes that it can't survive without him, so he decides to take it with him. The drones find them, so the arm tells him to hold on tight, and it drags him away, as Kazuha watches them from a distance, thinking the drones will be enough to get rid of them. We see Aki in the area, as her guide tells her where to go, but she realizes that the alley is too tight, so her arms Sinus and Dex ask her if they should break it, but she tells them she can squeeze through it. Hikaru runs away, wondering when the drones will stop chasing him, but Aki suddenly appears, and she summons Sinus and Dex, using them to destroy the drones with a single blow. But she calls Hikaru's arm Alma, telling him she will kill him if he moves, and Sinus and Dex remind her that she's supposed to protect them. but Kazuha shows up, saying he will pay her back for the night. She tells him he's not the one she's after, but she sees Hikaru as he tries to escape, so she thinks about going after him, but Kazuha attacks her, telling her not to ignore him, so she decides to take him on. Hikaru runs away, as he starts to regret his actions, but Alma tells him to leave him behind, because he knows that he's the target, telling Hikaru he doesn't want to put him in danger, because he's a good person. Aki catches up to them, and we see that she was able to defeat Kazuha. She tells them not to cause trouble for her, and Alma tells Hikaru to run, saying he will buy time for him. But Hikaru doesn't want to leave him behind, so he decides to fight, and she prepares to take him on, saying she has no choice because he's trying to resist. Alma tells him to step forward, saying it's the only way to survive, and he mentions that he believes in him. Hikaru recalls the ad telling him to step forward, and he knows it's difficult to face his fears, but he rushes forward, and he lunges at Aki, as Alma transforms into a massive fist. She tries to defend herself, but he smashes her to the ground, as Hikaru wonders what just happened. She tells him to wait, but he runs away with Alma, and they're able to escape the restricted area. We see a boy in the Kagami building, and he mentions that his Mecha-Ude has been stolen, saying that Alma belongs to him. Aki returns to her boss, who realizes that she wasn't able to capture Alma, and Sinus and Dex apologize for their failure, saying they didn't expect a civilian to use his power. Her boss tells her they need to act fast, because the Kagami group will identify him, telling her they need to protect him. We see Hikaru making his way to school, as he hides Alma in his hood, but as his class begins, he realizes that Aki has joined his class. She sees that the spot next to him is already taken, so she grabs a table and puts it in the space beside him, which freaks him out, as she tells him it's nice to meet him. We see a girl named Tuas watching him, thinking he's cute, so her companion Warner asks her if she likes him, but she tells him to take their mission seriously. Hikaru heads to the restroom, where he thinks about Aki, and Alma thinks she doesn't want to fight them, so he suggests talking to her. But Hikaru thinks she's scary, so he considers calling the police, as Alma plays with the toilet roll, and when Hikaru opens his eyes, he realizes that they're completely covered. Aki suddenly joins them, telling him not to go to the police, because they're working with the Kagami group, and she tells him she will protect him, but he runs away, as Mara sees her chasing after him. After that, Hikaru and his friends hang out on the roof, as they start teasing him, telling him that Aki is into him, and they see her looking for him. So they call out to her, but he suddenly disappears, and we see him hiding from her, but Alma tells him he needs to talk to her. But Mara goes up to her, and Hikaru thinks she's in trouble, since Aki is glaring at her. But she reveals she made sweets for her, and Aki can't resist eating them, saying it's delicious. Alma realizes that she isn't a bad person, asking Hikaru if he's going to talk to her, but he decides to go to sleep. Mara asks Aki about Hikaru, and she remembers that she needs to find him, but Mara tells her she has a plan. After class, Mara approaches Hikaru, and she gives him a letter, but he realizes it's from Aki, and she tells him she wants to meet him in the old school building. Mara tells him that Aki has been looking for him all day, and she thinks he isn't talking to her because he's nervous when he's around people. So she leads him to the building, telling him no one will see them there, and she forces him inside, telling him he can't run away. He sees Aki, and he asks her what she wants from him, so she tells him she's a member of ARMS, saying her mission is to watch over Alma. She mentions that she needs to take him to their headquarters, but Sinus and Dex think they need to take Hikaru as well, because Alma has already dearized with him. He has no idea what dearize means, but Alma tells him not to worry, saying he just needs to cooperate, but he isn't sure about trusting her. Alma explains that he wants to learn more about himself, because he lost his memories, so Hikaru decides to join Aki, saying he wants to help him. But he asks her why Alma can't move when he moves away from him, and she realizes that Alma dearized onto his hoodie, but she becomes confused, because Mecha-Ude usually only dearize with human flesh. So she thinks he needs to be examined, telling him he doesn't have a choice, so he panics, telling Alma to transform into his fist form. So he unleashes his powers, but he realizes that he isn't strong enough to transform. So Hikaru runs away with him, as Aki chases after them, and they reach the exit, but Mara doesn't let him leave, so he realizes he needs to find another way out. We see Tuas as she searches for him, but she can't find him, and Warner tells her there's a girl at the entrance. Aki can't find Hikaru, and Sinus and Dex tell her where to go, but she doesn't follow their advice, and she decides to go down. Hikaru realizes that the ceiling is about to break, and it collapses, as Aki catches him, asking him why he didn't kill her when he had the chance. She thinks he didn't dearize with Alma, and Sinus and Dex think he's manipulating him, so she asks Hikaru what he wants from Alma. But he explains that Hikaru isn't evil, and she tells them to show her their bond, so he unleashes his powers again. But he still can't transform, so she thinks Hikaru is a threat to Alma, and she prepares to kill him. But Mira suddenly opens the door, saying she heard a loud sound, and she sees Aki on top of Hikaru, so she freaks out, thinking about what they're doing, and Aki tells her to leave. So she runs away, as Wanner reports that their coast is clear. Aki realizes that Hikaru has disappeared, and we see him hiding from her, asking Alma if he still wants to talk to her. But Wanner suddenly appears, and Hikaru realizes that he's wearing a Kagami group uniform. He mentions that he wants to ask for help before Arms finds them, but Hikaru recalls that the drones from the Kagami group tried to kill him. So Wanner explains that there was a mistake, saying they weren't able to finish him off, so he's there to finish the job. He fires a sonic blast, and Alma thinks it didn't do anything, but Hikaru falls to his knees, as he gets a strange feeling. Wanner tells Tuas to fire, but she tells him he's in the way, so he moves to the side, and she shoots at Hikaru, but Alma saves him, and he runs away, as she blames Wanner for what happened. She keeps firing at Hikaru, who realizes that they're trying to kill him, and Wanner stuns him once again, telling Tuas he's stuck at the end of the hallway. So she shoots him, but Aki suddenly arrives to save him, and she mentions that there are 2 shackled Mecha-Udes. We learn that shackles are devices that remove the Mecha-Ude consciousness, and the Kagami group uses it to turn them into slaves. Wanner mentions that it makes them easier to use, and he fires another sonic blast, which hits Aki, but she tells Hikaru to hide while she fights. He refuses to leave her, but she explains that they can't let the Kagami group take Alma, so he runs away, as Wanner attacks her with his blades. Hikaru wonders why people keep hunting him down, but Alma tells him they can't leave Aki behind, and he decides to help her, telling Hikaru to escape while he saves Aki. He tries to walk away, but he hesitates, and he decides to join Alma, telling him they need to come up with a plan. He mentions that Wanner's sonic beam is dangerous, but Alma tells him he has an idea. We see that Wanner was able to shackle Sinus and Dex, and he heads to the rooftop, where he meets Tuas, who tells Aki she looks pathetic. But she mentions that they can't kill her, because their orders are to capture her alive. But Hikaru suddenly appears, claiming Wanner's attack will no longer work on him, so Wanner blasts him, but it doesn't work, and we see that Hikaru is using his headphones to cancel the noise. He charges at Wanner, telling Aki to fight, but he realizes she was caught. We learn that his plan was to create an opportunity for Aki, because he knows that he can't defeat Wanner and Tuas. But he realizes that he needs to change his plan, so he throws Alma towards Aki, telling him to release Sinus and Dex. So he tries to break the shackles, but he realizes that he isn't strong enough, and he tells Hikaru to come closer. So he rushes in, as Tuas shoots at him, but she misses, and Alma manages to break the shackles. Aki grabs onto Tuas, using her as a human shield, and she charges at Wanner. Tuas tells him to shoot, but he doesn't want to hit her, so she tells him they need to complete the mission, and he reluctantly fires, but Aki uses her headphones to protect herself, and she blows him away. After the fight, the building starts collapsing, so Tuas flies away, as Wanner realizes that he was left behind. The building crumbles, but we see that they're okay, and Aki's boss arrives with his team, telling her she made a mess. After that, Hikaru wakes up in the ARMS headquarters, as Aki's boss explains that their organization is fighting against the Kagami group because they want the Mecha-Ude to be free. He introduces himself as Aljus, and he mentions that his Mecha-Ude is called Fist, as Hikaru realizes that he looks like Alma. Fist tells Alma he'll regain his memories, calling him his little brother, and Aljus mentions that they need his help to take down the Kagami group. Alma agrees to join them, saying he wants to help his friends, so Hikaru realizes he will also need to fight, but Aljus tells him he doesn't need to do anything. Meanwhile, the guards at the Kagami building realize that another Mecha-Ude known as the Orbis has been stolen, and they panic because they know it's particularly dangerous. A man named Quen tells Hikaru they ran tests on his body, and he reveals that Iberium is a power generated by the human mind, which the Mecha-Ude need to function. He explains that Hikaru's Iberium is extremely low, so he has no potential as a Mecha-Ude wielder. Quinn tells him they have no choice but to leave Alma in his care, but he mentions that Hikaru is too weak, so he shouldn't do anything himself. But Aki disagrees, revealing that he was able to use Alma's powers, and she offers to train him so that he can get stronger. After that, we see Alma doing push-ups, as Hikaru wonders if it's supposed to make him stronger, because he isn't doing anything. So Aki explains that Iberium is all about spirit, telling him he just needs to psych himself up to make progress. They return to the headquarters, where Aljaz tells them about a thief who's stealing Mecha-Ude from its wielders. He mentions that they need to retrieve the Mecha-Ude as soon as possible, saying the wielder can't survive without it, because they will leak Iberium from the dearized point until they die. Fist explains that Iberium is still a mystery to them, but they know that it has a major effect on the human body, because the wielders gain superhuman abilities after Mecha-Ude is dearized with them. But he explains that it's different for Hikaru, because Alma didn't dearize with his body. Aki looks at the marks on the victim, and she realizes that he was attacked by a worm type, but Aljaz reminds her that her mission is to protect Alma, telling her not to let her feelings get involved. At the Kagami building, the officials discover the identity of the thief, and one of them thinks about ordering Expansion Division 3 to search for him. But a man named Toto tells him he can't trust the division because he thinks they helped the thief escape, and he mentions that his group called the White Ravens will capture the thief for the company. We see Hikaru following Aki, asking her where she's going, and they see a group of men reporting to their leader named Amada, who tells them to look for the thief. We learn that he's a member of the White Ravens, and he knows that the thief is the brother of the Kagami group's president. Aki appears with Hikaru, who wonders what she's doing, but she just tells him to stay by her side and keep Alma hidden. She asks them if they know about a worm-type Mecha-Ude wielder, but they suddenly attack her, so she blows them away, as Amada recognizes her, knowing she's a member of ARMS. Hikaru also gets blown away, telling her it's impossible to stay by her side, and he sees a boy named Jun nearby, telling him to escape, because he might get hurt. Hikaru runs away with him, as Amada's Mecha-Ude transforms into a bike, and he starts chasing after them, telling his men to deal with Aki. Hikaru and Jun are surrounded, and they're about to get attacked, but Alma saves them, telling Hikaru he can't stay hidden since he's in trouble. They see Amada approaching, and he realizes that Jun is gone, but Amada sees Alma, knowing the Expansion 3 team is looking for him, so Amada decides to capture him. Alma tries to get away with Hikaru, but Amada catches up to them, and he grabs onto Alma, but Aki suddenly appears, and she knocks him down, asking him about the worm-type Mecha-Ude wielder. But he tells her he doesn't know anything, and he starts begging for his life, so she decides to spare him. She asks Hikaru why he ran off, so he tells her about Jun, but she explains that they almost lost Alma because of him, telling him he's still weak, so he needs to stay close to her. But he reminds her that she was the one who led him there, and he tells her she knocked him down, saying he's had enough, so he decides to go home. We see Jun watching them, realizing Hikaru is Alma's wielder, so he decides to follow him. But Aki suddenly gets in the way, so he starts using his Mecha-Ude, and she realizes that it's a worm type. They start fighting, but she realizes he isn't the person she's looking for, and he uses his Mecha-Ude to electrocute her. Hikaru thinks about what to do next, and Alma gives him his phone, telling him to apologize to Aki, but he realizes she's in trouble, and he receives a call from her number. Jun tells him to surrender Alma, revealing that he removed Aki's Mecha-Ude, so she's going to die if Hikaru doesn't do anything. He mentions that he's willing to trade her for Alma, and he gives Hikaru his location. Hikaru reports the situation to Aljaz, telling him he needs to save her, but Aljaz tells him to wait for his new bodyguard, reminding him that their top priority is to protect Alma, and he tells Hikaru he's too weak to do anything. So he thinks he's useless, but Alma tells him to take action, reminding him that he was able to save Aki before. But he's convinced that he can't do anything alone, so he tells Alma to help him. They head to a warehouse, where they see Jun waiting for them, and he mentions that he wants to take Alma, thinking Sinus and Dex are nothing compared to him, because whoever dearizes with him will gain the strongest body. He attacks Hikaru, telling him to use Alma to fight back, so he dodges the attacks, and he manages to close the distance. But Jun pushes him back, and he prepares to finish him off, telling Hikaru he's too weak to do anything. But he mentions that he already knows that, and he charges in, as Jun tries to stop him, but Hikaru pushes him back. So he becomes angry, and he decides to fight seriously, surrounding Hikaru with his Mecha-Ude, which he uses to electrocute him. He tells him it's all over, and he removes Alma, saying it's time to say goodbye to his worthless body. But Alma suddenly knocks him down, and he calls out to Hikaru, who realizes that he needs to help him, so he reaches out to him, as Jun wonders how he can still move. He touches Alma, and there's suddenly a massive explosion, as he manages to unleash Alma's true power. Jun tries to take him down, but Alma overpowers him, and he barely manages to defend himself. But Hikaru charges in, as Alma merges with his arm, and they deliver a devastating blow, which knocks Jun out. Alma tells Hikaru he always believed in him, but Todo suddenly appears, saying he finally found Jun. He tells Hikaru not to worry, because he doesn't want to fight, revealing that his mission is just to capture Jun. But he takes Sinus and Dex, and Hikaru tells him to give them back, so he thinks he needs to fight, but Jun stops him, saying he wants to be the one who defeats Hikaru. So he surrenders Sinus and Dex, and he retreats, telling Hikaru they will meet again. The next day, we see Hikaru stitching Alma back into his jacket, and Aki joins him, telling him she's been looking for him. She reveals that she's searching for the worm-type Mecha-Ude wielder who killed her family, but she knows it isn't Jun, and she thanks Hikaru for saving her life. She helps him with the stitching, but Alma starts screaming, so he tells her to stop, and Maris suddenly appears, asking Aki if she wants some cookies. But she's surprised to see her with Hikaru, thinking they're having a moment, so she runs away, and Aki helps herself to the cookies. We see members of ARMS observing a transport truck, wondering if Hikaru will be able to finish his mission, and we see him watching a brute who's collecting Mecha-Ude. Alma thinks they need to save his comrades, but an ARMS member named Oyama tells them to follow the plan. The brute starts punching a Mecha-Ude, forcing it to transform, so Alma becomes angry, and he decides to make his move, causing the truck to crash. Hikaru runs away, but the brute pursues him, telling him to return the Mecha-Ude he rescued. He struggles to dodge the brute's attacks, and he gets cornered, as the brute blasts him with his cannon, but an ARMS member named Tani manages to save him just in time. The brute continues to pursue them, but Aki suddenly appears, knocking him down, and she tells Hikaru to escape, so Tani takes him away. The brute realizes that Aki has 2 Mecha-Ude, but he thinks he can defeat her because he has 3, but his weapon malfunctions, as he realizes he's out of power. Sinus and Dex tell him he doesn't stand a chance, because he can't control his Mecha-Ude without proper training. Aki contacts the recovery team, but a worm-type Mecha-Ude suddenly appears, and the brute gets back up, as she realizes that he's gone berserk. He starts attacking her, and she struggles to defend herself, realizing he's gotten stronger. But Hikaru suddenly joins the fight, pushing him back, and the brute fires a laser, but Alma easily deflects it. The brute tries to crush Hikaru with a truck, but he charges in, and he manages to overpower the brute and knock him down. Tani runs to Hikaru, telling him they were able to save countless Mecha-Udes thanks to him, but Aki thinks about the worm type that controlled the brute. After that, Aki takes a shower, and she recalls how she used to play with her sister, who told her she will protect the family because she's a hero. She meets Quen, who reveals that they were able to remove the brute's Mecha-Ude, but none of them were the worm type. But Sinus and Dex tell him they saw one while they were fighting him, saying it brought him back after he was defeated. The next day, Alma tries to wake Hikaru up, telling him he's late for school, but Aki suddenly appears, saying she will help him get there on time. At the classroom, the students are shocked, as they see Aki carrying Hikaru, so everyone thinks they're in a relationship. Mara tells Aki about an extremely rich transfer student, and a voice calls out to Hikaru, telling him to come to the roof. So he decides to go there, and he realizes that Jun is the transfer student. He explains that he's been looking for Hikaru, but Aki suddenly attacks him, so he prepares to take her on. But Todo reminds him about his promise, telling him it's the reason why he allowed him to transfer, and Jun recalls that he can't use his Mecha-Ude while he's at school. So he decides to surrender, saying he will take Alma in the future, but he mentions that he transferred because of Hikaru. He reveals that he still hasn't mastered how to control his Mecha-Ude Ouroboros, so he wants to learn Hikaru's secret, since he was able to unleash Alma's power. He asks Jun if he knows anything about Alma, telling him he lost his memories, but Aki charges in, saying Jun needs to be taken out because he's too dangerous. But Alma stops her, so they start fighting, and June mentions that he won't fight them while they're at school, but he warns them to be careful when they're walking home at night. During their lunch break, Aki keeps following Hikaru, who tries to escape from her, saying he just wants to be alone. He manages to lose her, but he wasn't able to eat his lunch, and June tells him his timing is perfect, as he recalls that Toto told him Hikaru's diet helps him control Alma. He offers to buy Hikaru his lunch using his black card. But Aki appears, telling June to buy lunch for her instead, and she tells him to treat her to some top-grade yakiniku. But he refuses to buy it for her, and they start to argue, as Meru watches them, realizing they're fighting over Hikaru. Hikaru heads to the toilet, wondering how he can get rid of Aki, because he wants to ask June about Alma. He thinks he will finally get his chance during the sports tournament, but he can't find June, and a ball hits him as June watches him from a distance, wondering why he wasn't able to dodge it. Another ball almost hits him, and it crashes into Hikaru, knocking him out, as Aki realizes that she missed June, and she apologizes for hitting Hikaru. Meru suddenly joins them, and June tells her that Hikaru belongs to him, so she tells him to have a duel with Aki, saying the winner will get Hikaru. When Hikaru wakes up, he realizes they're about to fight, and Alma tells him he needs to stop them. So he promises to buy the top-grade yakiniku for Aki, under the condition that she gives him a moment to talk to June. So she walks away with Meru, and Alma asks June if he knows anything about him, saying he lost all of his memories. So June reveals that he used to belong to his ancestor named Yakumo Kagami, and Hikaru recognizes him, knowing he's the founder of the Kagami group. Alma wonders if he hurt his comrades, but June tells him he doesn't know, and Aki receives a call from Quen, who tells her he has information about the worm-type Mecha-Ude she's looking for. Hikaru heads to the Yakuma Kagami library, where Alma sees supporters of the Kagami group, wondering why they're supporting an evil company. He sees a picture of Yakumo, and he suddenly starts crying, as he mentions that he can't remember anything, so he thinks he's useless. We see Tani being attacked by a worm-type Mecha-Ude when Aki arrives, recognizing the host as the person who killed her family. The girl removes Tani's Mecha-Ude Carex, throwing him away, and she crushes it into pieces. Aki charges at her, but the girl jumps away, and she starts controlling Tani, causing him to go berserk. Aki realizes that she's the same person who controlled the brute, and Tani starts attacking her, as the girl uses the opportunity to escape. Aki fights back against Tani, knocking him out, and Hikaru arrives at the scene, realizing he's in terrible shape, as Oyama arrives with the others, saying they need to take him to the headquarters. Tani receives medical treatment, as Algis mentions that he will survive, but he thinks Carex won't make it. Hikaru wonders if they can repair him, but Algis explains that Mecha-Ude are mechanical life forms, so death is permanent for them. Fist reveals that they came from a different dimension, because they were searching for the artifact that gave them life, which is called the Ordella, thinking it could help them save their homeland. The humans helped them find it, but an accident occurred while they were trying to awaken it, so Alma used all of his powers to seal it away, but it caused him to go into a long sleep. Algis explains that he's important, because his lost memories are the key to activating and sealing Ordella. We see Quen telling Aki about the worm-type Mecha-Ude host, revealing that she's been attacking other wielders during the past few months. Aki wonders why she hasn't heard about it, so he explains that he had to hack the ARMS database to get the info, saying Algis appears to be investigating the case alone. He mentions that the first record was from 8 years ago, and she thinks it's the incident where her family was killed. They hear a notification, and Quen mentions that the worm-type Mecha-Ude wielder has appeared again, so Aki rushes to find her. She sees her, telling her to show her face, but she realizes that the girl is her sister Fubuki. In a flashback, we see Aki playing with Fubuki, who tells Sinus and Dex to lock the princess up, since they're the villains. But they refuse to cooperate, and Aki doesn't want to fight them, so Fubuki realizes that the story is a mess. A woman calls her, telling her they have a new Mecha-Ude, and Aki tries to follow her, but she stumbles, so Fubuki catches her, telling her to do her part as the hero. But after some time, the establishment catches fire, and as Aki tries to look for her sister, she sees Sinus's cube, but her family is nowhere to be found. We return to the present, as Fubuki hugs Aki, but she suddenly starts coughing, and her Mecha-Ude named Amaryllis appears, so Sinus and Dex attack it, as Aki's hairpin falls off. She thinks Fubuki is being controlled by Amaryllis, but the other members of ARMS appear, so she leaves the scene, but they see her hairpin on the ground. She mentions that she doesn't want Arms to get involved, and she blames Amaryllis for her parents' death, but Fubuki explains Amaryllis is innocent, saying she's the one responsible for what happened. Amaryllis explains that it was an accident, saying the scientists were trying to perform an experiment, but Fubuki's Abirium suddenly reacted with her, destroying everything around them. Sinus was removed from Fubuki's body, and Amaryllis tried to theorize with her, hoping it would improve the situation. But it only made things worse, because Fubuki was in a state of panic, so her Abirium caused Amaryllis to lose control. But Aki doesn't believe her, and Fubuki explains that Amaryllis tried to save her, but she suddenly collapses, so Aki thinks they should take her to a doctor. But Amaryllis explains that her disease can't be cured by doctors, because her body can no longer produce Abirium, saying there's only one way to save her life. The next day, Alma tries to wake Hikaru up, telling him it's almost time for Aki to show up. So he panics, but he hears the doorbell, and he's surprised she didn't come through his window. They make their way to school, and Meru appears, inviting Hikaru to study with Aki and June, and she mentions that they will study in his house. He thinks it's a terrible idea, but June thinks it's his chance to learn Hikaru's secret, so he decides to join them, saying he wants to study with him. Meru tells Aki to join them, but she tells them she isn't interested, so Meru tells her it's her chance to go to Hikaru's house. But she explains that she goes there every day, and Meru can't believe it, thinking their relationship is getting serious. Hikaru tells Aki she's acting strange, asking her what happened, but she decides not to tell him anything. Meanwhile, an Arms member approaches Quen, asking him what happened to Aki, and he tells her he doesn't know anything. But she doesn't believe him, and she starts pulling his hair, so he decides to tell her the truth. Amaryllis reveals that she has the power to absorb Abirium from other Mecha-Ude hosts, so it's how she has been helping Fubuki. But she mentions that her disease is getting worse, and she asks Aki if she's willing to do what it takes to save her, saying they're running out of time. Amaryllis explains that the only way to save Fubuki is to kill Hikaru, because his Abirium is special, saying they can use it to save her. After that, we see Mecha-Ude wielders going berserk, and they go on a rampage, as everyone wonders what's going on. Algis notes that the civilians are in danger, so he orders the members of Arms to secure the subjects. Oyama defeats one of them, recognizing him as a member of the Kagami group, so he realizes that they aren't responsible for the incident. Kazuha is about to attack one of the subjects, but Amada beats him to it, and he recognizes Amada, knowing he's a member of the White Ravens. Amada looks down on him, recognizing him as a member of Expansion 3, so he charges at Amada, but his attack is blocked, and he's easily taken out. Hikaru and the others prepare for their study session, but he suddenly receives a message from Algis, so he tells them he can't join them. He goes to the headquarters, where Algis tells him what's happening, showing him the worm-type Mecha-Ude controlling the subjects. He wonders if Aki is involved, so Algis explains that she made contact with the person behind the incident, and he thinks she needs to be captured, because she has betrayed them. Alma reminds him that she's their comrade, but Fist explains that it doesn't matter, telling him they shouldn't let their emotions ruin their judgment. Hikaru decides to look for her before Arms finds her, but he sees Quen, who calls him a fool, because he's running off without a plan. Warner appears, and Quen explains that he can help them find Aki. We see his Mecha-Ude named Kagemaru, who apologizes for trying to kill Hikaru in the past, and he reveals that Arms saved him from Warner's control, so he can now act freely. But he explains that he doesn't want to leave Warner, because he wants to teach him how to become a Bushido warrior, and he orders him to get on the floor, telling him he needs to atone for his sins. They look around the city, as Kagemaru explains that his sonar will help them find Aki's Abirium, but June suddenly appears, telling Hikaru he won't leave his side until he discovers his secret. But Alma asks him if he will help them find Aki, saying they can have a study session together after they save her. We see Todo talking to the president of the Kagami group, telling him June is getting involved in the incident. So Todo wonders if they should bring him back, because he might get hurt, but the president doesn't care, saying they don't need to do anything, because his safety isn't the priority of their company. Kagemaru continues to search for Aki, and he gets a signal, so he leads them to the spot where she found Fubuki, and they finally see her, but she glares at them, so Hikaru realizes that something's wrong. He tries to talk to her, and she tells him he needs to come with her, even if she needs to take him by force. But June stops her, saying that Hikaru belongs to him, so they start to fight, and he manages to restrain her. Hikaru gets in the way, asking them both to calm down, and he asks Aki why she needs him, so Sinus and Dex tell them about Fubuki's situation. June thinks Amaryllis is manipulating Aki, but Hikaru still agrees to help her, reminding her that they're friends. Alma also mentions the yakiniku, and says they should all eat together once things are over. June thinks it's an obvious trap, but Hikaru still insists on going. But seeing how far he's willing to go for her, she changes her mind, saying she doesn't want his pity. She tells him they were never friends, and she decides to leave without him. She returns to Fubuki, and Amaryllis realizes she didn't bring Hikaru, reminding her that Fubuki's body won't last much longer. Aki thinks they need to find another way, but Fubuki thinks she cares about Hikaru more than her. She asks Aki if she's willing to lose her again, but Aki offers to give her her own Iberium. Alma thinks they need to go after Aki, but Hikaru is depressed after hearing they weren't friends. He thinks they shouldn't get in her way, but Jun is reminded of himself when he didn't want to get in his brother's way. So he tells Hikaru to man up, and he realizes he needs to go after her. Meanwhile, we see Quinn with Kayano, as they find information about the accident with Amaryllis, which led to the death of Aki's family. They realize Fubuki is the host of the worm, but they wonder why she has only just appeared after all this time. All just suddenly joins them, mentioning they must be after Hikaru's Iberium. Quinn wonders why he never told Aki her sister was alive, but All just notes that she's just being controlled by Amaryllis, so he didn't think Aki could handle it, and he wanted to deal with it secretly. Meanwhile, Amaryllis tells Aki her Iberium isn't enough, so Hikaru is the only option. Fubuki tells her she needs to be punished for not listening, and Aki finally realizes she's being controlled. So they start to fight, but Fubuki suddenly begs for her help, so she becomes distracted and gets caught. Amaryllis tells her she's too easy to fool, and she thinks about taking over Aki's body. Amaryllis reveals she actually killed Aki's parents to take over Fubuki's body, so she falls into despair, but Hikaru suddenly bursts through the window, and he knocks Amaryllis away. Aki wonders why he came, telling him he's the target, but he doesn't care, saying she's his friend. Amaryllis gets back up, and Aki tells them her sister is being controlled. June gets caught, but he holds her back from getting to Hikaru. Amaryllis recognizes Ouroboros, but she laughs since it's just a failed copy of her. Hikaru gets knocked back, and Alma notes that his power is fading, realizing that Amaryllis absorbed their power during her attack. Aki gets in the way, so Amaryllis praises her dedication to her job, but she notes that she's protecting him because she's his friend. Amaryllis notes that Fubuki is still her hostage, so there's nothing Aki can do. She prepares to deal with Hikaru, and he charges at her, but she uses Aki as a shield, so he ends up being stabbed. She starts absorbing his Iberium, and she finds it just as abundant as it was 100 years ago. Alma wonders what she means, and Aki tries to get free, but Amaryllis tells her she's no longer needed. She apologizes for failing to save Fubuki once again, begging someone to help her, and Hikaru suddenly starts to overflow with even more energy. Amaryllis gets excited from all the Iberium she's absorbing, but Hikaru suddenly overwhelms her, and he manages to free Aki. As the dust clears, Hikaru is weakened, so June steps up to face Amaryllis, but she doesn't think he's worth her time, so he attacks with his Mecha-Ude, refusing to be ignored. Amaryllis tries to fight back, but he uses all his strength and he manages to tear her away from Fubuki. Aki rushes to her sister, and as she wakes up, she seems to be back to normal. Amaryllis controls her other puppets, but Aki is able to blow them away. Amaryllis prepares to deal with her, but Hikaru charges in, blowing away part of her body. She's surprised by his power, so she unleashes everything to deal with him, but Hikaru is able to overwhelm her. As she starts to shatter, she blames Alma for everything, saying he was responsible for Yakumo's death. But she fades away, so Hikaru is glad it's all over, but Alma wonders what she meant, and we see that she actually managed to survive, but she's caught by a mysterious man. After that, we see Aki breaking into Hikaru's room once again, telling him to wake up, but he's just glad that she's back to normal. As they head to school, Aki thanks him for everything, but he tells her not to worry about it since they're friends. She asks him for a favor, wanting him to help her study, because she wants to be able to teach Fubuki. So he agrees to help her, and she promises to guard him even closer, but he tells her it's not necessary. Meanwhile at the Kagami group, We see them testing a gate, and we learn they're trying to open a portal to the Mecha-Ude world, so they can profit from taking control of all the Mecha-Ude that reside there. The president notes that they need the Aldera as the power source, but the trigger arm is needed to activate it, so he's determined to retrieve Alma. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.